What was the biggest mistake someone new at your job made? He couldn't find the opening of a garbage bag, so he used some scissors to make his own. What a surprise that was when I pulled out the bag and the content stayed in the container while the bag was in my hands. Other comments in this thread, I understand how the mistake happened. This one. I just have no clue how that would seem like a good idea. I used to work for Geek Squad. A new guy got confused and reformatted the wrong computer. Customer was understandably pissed. The store ended up having to pay a couple $1,000s to have his data retrieved by a professional data recovery service. Well, firstly they were late on the first day. Following that, after about an hour, then they asked how to open the program they said they were proficient in operating, which was required for their job. I had a new guy ring me for some tech support. He didn't like the answer I gave him, so he gave me a mouthful of abuse and then slammed the phone down. We worked for different departments in a global company. I don't know where I was located, but the 10 paces that took me straight to his desk must have been quite a shock. They stacked donuts on top of one another when heating them in this conveyor belt type machine. The donuts and machine caught on fire. Editor, you guys crack me up. I work at a cinema, so burning things happens on the reg. Poor girl was not having a good day though. She ended up covered head to toe in mango frozen yogurt later that night thanks to a faulty machine. Never laughed so hard in my life. A guy at work was told to go to the roof of a 4-story building, tie a rope grab to an anchor and come back down. He took this literally and used the rope to slide down the building. He had no gloves on and proceeded to burn through his skin on his hands down to his bone as he held on for dear life. Welcome to your first day as our new office assistant. I'ma need you to rappel down the outside of the building with some pirate-ass equipment. I work in IT. We had a guy around September of last year who vehemently refused to look anything up. He was a stubborn older guy who thought he knew it all. The CEO of one of our clients had an iMac in his office that wouldn't boot up at all. The new guy was sent in and immediately declared it FUBAR. The guy trusted his judgment and bought a whole new iMac. I don't remember the issue, but it was a 20-minute fix in safe mode when he brought the iMac back to our office. His excuse was, I didn't think Macs could do that. We lost that client, and Dave got fired. I used to work as a service station attendant and there was a new guy at work who fell asleep at the counter. A larger woman, customer, stood at the counter and rapped on the counter. He got startled awake and exclaimed, "You fatty woman scared me." Needless to say, she complained big time to the boss. At the night shift at a small mental hospital, new guy wants to watch movies at the nurse's station's computers but can't under the hospital's OS. So he decides to try to install Linux. Fails and computer won't boot to anything. Doesn't tell anyone. He didn't get fired, but wasn't allowed to go into a room where there was a computer, which was anywhere but a hallway. So he had to work night shifts completely in the hallways. Why in the flying fuck would anyone think it's okay to just install a different OS in a workstation computer is beyond me. We had a 17-year-old kid come in to do some work experience at our engineering firm. That week we also had a relatively new starter come into our team from another office hoping to move to the city. So our new starter asked the 17-year-old kid to do some photocopying prep for an important meeting he had that afternoon and desperately need some drawings. The poor kid wasn't told what to do and ended up breaking the machine to the point we needed a call out to fix it. New guy lost his shit and started swearing at the poor kid, calling him a useless piece of shit. Everyone could hear across the office from the copy room. Our director overheard and came to investigate. It was the director's son on placement. The new disappeared pretty quickly. Worked in a salon, we had one girl fill up a big sink with detergent and proceed to wash up our color bowls with the coffee cups. We ended up throwing away the coffee cups because we didn't want to accidentally poison a client. And before anyone asks, we had made it very clear to her that there were separate sinks for each and to not mix them up. Edit, the problem wasn't the detergent, which was a standard dishwashing detergent. The problem was the color bowls. Serving up coffee to people with potential traces of ammonia and hydrogen peroxide and various other chemicals is a bad idea. Edit 2, it wasn't my call to throw away the cups, our boss said it had to be done, so be it. He did a tire change and put the tires back on, but only tightened the lug nuts a few times by hand loosely. They're then supposed to be secured with a torque to whatever setting. But he forgot to do that, so the customer is driving down the highway when they finally come loose and the tires just fly off. Yeah. Yee? New guy left a freezer door propped open overnight and ruined thousands of dollars worth of food. The boss shrugged it off and gave the guy a lecture, told him not to do it again. Sadly, most of the rest of the staff bullied him about it until he quit a week later. I worked at an injection molding plant. Guy was changing a mold out and forgot step 2. Unclamp the mold from the machine. He took the crane up, heard a massive crash and realized he pulled 2 of the press's anchors out of the ground. Someone I know, couldn't have been me, worked in retail, and accidentally put their register into training mode, where it acts normal, but when you tender a transaction, no one's card actually gets charged. Tendered about 6 or 7 transactions like this. It cost thousands, and there were literally no repercussions. Except bosses told him not to do it again. I used to work outside at a swimming pool shop. Me and the new guy were filling jugs of chlorine before it was break time for me. Once my break was over, I came back to find a lake of chlorine had engulfed the yard. From what I remembered, it was 2,000 plus gallons of the stuff. At $9 per 5 gallons. You do the math. They fired him for it. The guy who got hired afterwards was always high. A week into his employment, he rammed the forklift onto a pallet of muriatic acid, spilling it across the yard. But he wasn't fired for that, no. The next day, he ended up smoking a joint inside the shop, in the bathroom. Bonus, I ended up back-ending my boss's Ford F-150 with the forklift. Really, it was just the bumper. I had to pay $500 via check deductions or get fired. Yup. I hate that job. There is something uplifting about this thread. I always hear stories from people who made tons of money for their companies and didn't see a dime of it. It's nice to think that for every person with $1 million contribution, there is another guy with $1 million fuck-up. Dunno why. The new guy at my work ran a plate of regular pasta to a woman that had celiac disease and had ordered it gluten-free. She ate a decent amount of the pasta before her server saw what she was eating and snatched it off the table. The woman was understandably upset, and after talking to the manager for about 20 minutes her stomach had swollen like 2 times its normal size. Dude wasn't fired even though we go through an extensive 2-week training before being put on the floor on our own. He was later fired for falling asleep in the middle of taking an order at table. Call center. We were all basically new as the place had opened within the past 6 months. He just started. Being such a new place, pretty much everyone knew everyone by name. It wasn't difficult. There were, maybe, 100 of us. So one day, new guy, me, and a few others were outside in the smoke area talking. For whatever reason, guy starts talking about why he was fired from his last job. Credit card SS hash theft. We were all glancing at him like he was the world's biggest idiot. And glancing over at the call center manager and his assistant, who were suddenly very tuned into our conversation. We all went inside. New guy stayed outside. Management also came inside. Within the hour, he was gone. He never made it back to the phones. One of the things the night shift has to do is shred all the papers in the shred boxes. The new girl shredded everything in our boss's inbox. To be fair, it wasn't marked at all and the inboxes looked just like the shred boxes. A nurse at my work had just graduated from nursing school less than a month before and started brand new career. She got rooms 247 and 245 confused. One lady got a really small dose of her usual pain medication, fine, whatever. The guy in the next room for a dose 10 times what he was supposed to. Wanted to charge his iPhone, so he plugged it into a computer that was secured and not meant to have anything connected to it, ever. Mistake on so many levels. Security took his phone and kept it for 6 months while it was forensically examined. During this entire time he kept paying the bill for a phone he didn't actually have. Eventually, it was returned to him and he was upset that all of the data on the phone had been wiped. I'm a valet. This kid I worked with hit one of the support pillars in the garage with the side of a car, scraped the entire side, flattened the fender, and ripped the tire apart. This was during an overnight shift, and instead of notifying someone, he just parked it in the garage and went about his business. He actually ended up getting fired for going up to a guest's room to fool around while on the clock, but yeah, he fucked that car up real good. Something like $20,000 in damages to a brand new Jeep Compass. A week in he pre-called in sick. Said he thought he was getting the flu and that he needed the next 2 days off. My boss fired him on the spot. His mom called an hour later demanding answers. Apparently he lied to her as to why he was fired. Now he's fired and grounded. Not new, but probably funniest accident I ever made. I work customer service at a giant retail store, and a customer returned a doll that was supposed to talk. I damaged it out, and as required I wrote a reason on the damage ticket. As this one was DOA, I wrote stillborn thinking somebody in the DC would find the dark humor. Put the ticket smack front center, in the appropriate location for damaged items waiting for processing. It made it back out to the sales floor, with the ticket still on it. A guy went to training to be a bank teller. They learned how to open up family trusts. The trainer had them out Michael Jordan as an example for the beneficiary. It wasn't until 6 months later after a customer noticed that he had entered Michael Jordan as one of the beneficiaries for every trust he opened. This was someone in the same training group that I started the job with. I cruised through the training, and in my spare time wrote a quick batch file to open up the most used programs at the start of the day, then feeling nice I sent this out to the people in my training group. This particular guy somehow managed to open up hundreds of instances of each program and link in the batch file, because he claimed he didn't know where it was all going, straight to the taskbar, and kept running the batch file over and over and over. He ended up sitting at his computer doing nothing but running my batch file repeatedly for 2 hours, not taking any calls, until one of the supervisors went over to check on him. This is a tech support job, and yes, he is no longer here. This guy at my office brought his pet goldfish to work, and one of the brokers apparently ate it after a disagreement they had with the intern ever since my HR director has banned pets for a more productive atmosphere. A new girl at my job told everyone about how she doesn't believe in the moon, as in she thinks the moon is a huge picture attached to a satellite put there by the government. Needless to say, everyone always makes fun of her. I work in the inpatient behavioral health unit of a hospital, psych ward. A co-worker of mine started dating a recently discharged patient, which is dumb. Then she posted about it on Facebook, where she is friends with a lot of our co-workers, which is really dumb. IT guy came into our office to configure a MacBook. He wasn't a Mac specialist. He also didn't know how Dropbox worked. He deleted the Dropbox folders from this Mac, and from all the other computers linked to it. He deleted all our agency's files, several gigs of them. We were nervous for a couple of hours, clients were nervous. Our boss called his boss. Another time, the same IT guy was waiting for an email confirmation about the importance of files on a computer. Didn't receive the email. Assumed that the files weren't important. Deleted a month's worth of web design without backing up. I'm amazed this guy is still working at that company. We hired a projectionist in 2006. He threaded The Hills Have Eyes instead of Ice Age, The Meltdown. Needless to say, the brutal rape scene at the very beginning didn't impress the kids, or their parents. New girl where I work, retail, started freeloading within 2 months of being there as she hadn't even passed the 3-month probation yet. In case anyone doesn't know, freeloading is putting items in a customer's bag and intentionally not scanning them so they get them for free. Apparently she started doing it for family, then for friends, and then acquaintances, obviously thinking we couldn't track it. Sure turned around quick when the cops escorted her out one day. For 30 AM and then having to read a lot of documentation. That would put a lot of people to sleep. Being nasty to people in a small sector is never a good idea, you run into these people again and again. Not good work by either party here. But the boss sounds like a control freak. We must work at the same place. There's one dishwasher who knows how to correctly work the machine, and God bless him, he takes it upon himself to throw people out of the pit and change the water himself every once in a while. A lot of the time, the new hires have no idea why this big guy is yelling at them in Spanish, and drama ensues. What do you expect when there's no training? They're a dishwasher, expecting every person who has that job to be a world-beating genius is just dumb. Edit, in the dishwashing position, you will probably get some people who are just passing by on their way to greater things or whatnot, but let's be honest, you're going to get some idiots. It's a shitty job and you will get some people who have no clue and no common sense. That's just the nature of the position. If you don't train them and it ends up biting you in the ass, it's your fault. It'd probably take 10 minutes max to explain how to operate the machine. Seems to me the employer is to blame here. Instructor says how to do it correctly and the student refuses and insists she was taught at school that she didn't have to tent the skin. After a mild dispute, the instructor says whatever, he will be fine. It's the instructor who should be fired. LOL, when I was a new dispatcher, I took that call on a Sunday morning. Instead of asking supervisor for advice, I went ahead and toned out a truck. Quiet Sunday morning interrupted with me telling the nearest station to respond to a cat in a tree. The on-duty chief comes across, disregard that station X, we will take the pickup and advise. The chief calls me on the way and gave me that line, have you ever seen a cat skeleton in a tree? He had no gloves on and proceeded to burn through his skin on his hands down to his bone as he held on for dear life. What kind of rope was that? It's not too hard to slowly climb down regular jute rope using both hands and feet. One time I had to drive my personal car to a job site. It was very dark and I backed my Camaro into one of our gear trucks pretty damn hard. I got out of the car in total embarrassment to assess the damage. To my amazement, no one noticed. It was pretty loud and they were like 20 feet away. I have no idea how they didn't hear. I just said, all right guys, I'm out of here and left, straight face, edit, no damage was done to the gear truck's bumper. Only mine and my pride. Reminds me of the most recent hire at my work. A 30-something woman took a smoke break during the beginning of a lunch rush and walked off the job on her first day, after 4 hours of training. Didn't tell me, didn't tell my coworker who was actually training her, didn't tell the goddamn manager. Instead, she sends her husband in 2 hours later to fetch her jacket. We can't release her property to anyone but her. So her husband proceeds to have a near screaming match at my manager. That's a bummer, since it sounds like the dude at least knew enough to replace it on his own and genuinely thought he was doing the right thing. I get that what he did was wrong, but it sounds like he was competent and made an honest mistake, which after a valuable lesson like this, sounds like a waste to fire him. Some companies have the mindset that you need to master the skill you just learned that day. When really it's ops fault. Why would you not come back and check before 500 boards were cut? Seems like the OP just kind of threw him under the bus on that one. He could have stepped up and at least admitted that he could have trained him better. Sometimes I order electronics, and when they arrive, they're just bum. I always wonder what could have possibly gone wrong in a factory that led to me getting a dud. I'll remember this story. Maybe it's typically new people to the process fucking something up. Remember, it's not the new guy, it's the trainer or lack of one. You can't just sit on a machine and go, yes, I know exactly how this works, unless you have prior experience. To be good at something, you need to know how to do it correctly first. Guy I know did that. Drilled from inside the house, for some odd reason, outside threw brick right into the gas meter. The drill got stuck in the metal. Boss called me and another tech to help out because it was obviously going to take longer to finish. I show up and the fire department is leaving and the gas guy installed a fresh gas meter box on the house. He never lived that down. A guy I know, Jeff, worked as an ed tech at a special needs school. One day during recess, one of the autistic kids bolted, jumped the fence and just started running down the street. Jeff was the only adult within earshot, so he ran after the kid, thankfully caught him and brought him back. Then got fired for leaving the other kids unsupervised. I worked a brewery which sold beer in bottles with an unusual ceramic top. The ceramic top had a small rubber washer. Calling these off from the supplier was the junior brewing staff's job. The deal was already set up by purchasing with several buy breaks, e.g. 1,000, 10,000, etc. at varying unit prices, i.e. buy more, play less per washer? New boy gets the job. Figures he can save money by buying a larger quantity. Which of course is technically true. Unfortunately, when they arrived they couldn't fit in the warehouse. He'd ordered 10x the usual long-term order, well over $1 million. We ended up having to rent extra warehouse space. At least he made a name for himself. Do you know how we clean beakers after a lab in chemistry? Soap and water, followed by a rinse of deionized water to remove any impurities that may interfere with the next experiment. If you're just cleaning a mug, I don't see why water and detergent wouldn't clean it enough. She did nothing wrong, and you really didn't need to throw those cups away. Some friends and I were outside a restaurant one day when this car pulls in, his front right tire wobbling like it was about to come off any second. This wannabe thug kid gets out and we told him, to which he replied, nah bro, I just got these rims put on. So, we told him that they must not have tightened one of them, but he wouldn't listen to us, and started getting an attitude when we insisted his tire was about to fall off. So, we go back to our conversation, and a couple minutes later, he walks out of the restaurant, jumps in his car and takes off. One of my buddies suggested driving the same direction he went and seeing, and no shit, less than a quarter mile down the road we found him, sitting in a ditch with the wheel nowhere in sight. This happened twice where I work, same guy both times. Thing is, I work at a Benz dealership, and the wheels fell off at the entrance to the service drive, right where all the customers are. Needless to say, he was let go, and now we need to get a witness signature for every car saying we saw it talk properly. This is how things should work, the first half of it anyway. Someone made a mistake, no one got hurt, killed, so there's nothing to really do about it but get yelled at and taught how not to do it again. No reason to be fired over something like that. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.